Welcome to the Prosperity Lounge, where growth gets personal. I'm Joey Ruffalo, and today's conversation is about something we all experience, whether we admit it or not: pressure. Pressure in business, pressure in leadership, pressure when stakes are high and the room gets quiet. Most people try to avoid it. Some, some try to power through it. Very few learn how to use it. My guest today believes winning isn't about motivation, isn't about hustle or brute force. It's about leverage, positioning, and understanding that life and business aren't chaos, they're systems. He spent decades studying combat, discipline, and performance at the highest levels, not just on the mat, but in the marketplace. From reviving one of the most influential sports in history to coaching high level entrepreneurs under extreme pressure, he's learned this truth: business is combat, just without the physical contact. Have you ever felt stuck, overwhelmed, or like you're pushing hard and not getting traction? This conversation is for you. So pull up a chair. You're about to enter the Prosperity Lounge.
Grab a seat, sip some wisdom, and stay a while. This is the Prosperity Lounge, where growth gets personal. Step inside, we're breaking chains.
Welcome back to the Prosperity Lounge, where we talk about personal finance, wellness, leadership, and business growth, all rooted in the values of faith, discipline, and taking action. Today's guest is someone who thinks about success in a way most people never have. He's a strategist, a combat scientist, and a coach who believes winning is not an accident, it's a system. He's the founder of Scientific Wrestling, where he spent more than 2 decades reviving the most influential yet forgotten combat sport, catch-as-catch-can wrestling, a discipline whose DNA runs through the Olympics, college wrestling, WWE, and even the UFC. But beyond the mat, Jake is also the founder of Number One Coaching, helping entrepreneurs and leaders apply the same principles of leverage, positioning, and engineered friction that elite fighters use to dominate under pressure. He's even named the number one coach for Grant Cardone's clients, helping them generate revenue targets and produce results through systems, not motivation. Today, we're diving deep into why business is combat, why most people are competing when they should be dominating, and how you can use friction instead of fearing it to break through whatever's holding you back. So, Jake, thanks for pulling up a chair. Welcome, Jake Shannon, to the Prosperity Lounge.
Dude, Joey, I'm so excited, man. We had such a good kind of BS session prepping for this, so I'm really excited to get at it with you.
I am too, man. I want to get into something we kind of talked about, and a phrase that grabbed my attention immediately, and that was business is combat without the physical contact. Let's start right there. What does that actually mean, and why is adopting that so important to the mindset of entrepreneurs?
Well, first and foremost, you mentioned it. Where it's really important is it got your attention
Sure did.
because that's the whole point of marketing is to grab somebody's attention and then use that attention to bring them into your ecosystem to see if it's a good fit.
Mm,
So I've been around this whole combat sports between on the business side and coaching and being a practitioner for a long time, and so it influences a lot of my perspective. But if you look at something like the WWE,
mhm.
that was a company that was acquired for $8 billion, and it's not even real fighting, but they figured out it's so good at getting attention. Okay, now, beyond that, beyond the gimmick of it, the attraction, is that I do think there is some strength to the metaphor. I'm not a big, when I use the word combat, I'm not using it in the military sense. I'm using it in the combat sports
Mm,
sense.
okay.
And that's because I believe sports in general is a fantastic metaphor for business. Now, my sport, where I spent most of my attention in my adult life, is on combat sports, so I use that metaphor. But sports in general are a fantastic way to look at what it takes to win in business. And it's cooperative, right? You've got your own team that you got to work with.
Hmm.
It's competitive. You've got other people that you're working with or against,
Sure.
suppose, competitors. There are rules of engagement. Now, there's plenty of cheaters in business and cheaters in sports, but I'm assuming that you have good sportsmanship here and business ethics. What else is in common between the two? Numbers. There's a lot of activity, a lot of
Hmm.
performance. If you don't perform, you don't eat, and particularly with, like, say, sales or on the delivery of your product. Or if you're a boxer or a soccer player and you don't do it, you don't win. You're not going to be long in that game. But how do we determine that? Is with numbers. In sports, athletics,
Hmm.
you're putting points on the board,
Yeah.
okay, and then you're building a track record of wins. And your performance, whether you're at the top of the food chain or you're somebody in the middle or even at the bottom, what was your 40-yard dash? What was your yards completed, passes completed, sacks?
Hmm.
Okay, just using football
Sure.
sake
Sure.
for a metaphor there. What was Q1 revenue? What was the gap between that and your target? So there's so many interesting parallels. In fact, I've written a couple books.
Okay.
Sportify is really the concept, and I go into this idea of it's kind of popular now called gamification, and I want to extend gamification to this concept I call sportification. So it goes beyond just games, and it goes more into the actual performance for performance sake, winning and applying what you can from sports into the business arena. I don't know. That's
No,
kind of
that's
long winded.
perfect.
Maybe I got off, but I hope I answered your
I love
question.
that. I had actually a situation recently pop up. It was last week, um, where I'm trying for this position in the community, and um, basically it's my third attempt at it. And I find out tomorrow, but my third attempt at it. And I went up and I spoke about it, and I really laid into the sports aspect of, man, I got 2 strikes against me already for this, but I'm not going to step away from the plate. I use baseball analogies a lot. I'm not gonna step away from the plate. You
Yeah.
got patience for it. You work the count. You keep showing up for the next pitch. You don't just, "I'm down 0-2, drop the bat." You work the count. I don't know how many times down people are down 0-2 and they work a walk or get a hit and get on base. Or even if you get out at that particular at bat, your next at bat, you're looking for something, you know what you're looking for, and you get a hit. I mean, I always kinda think about, there's guys in the Hall of Fame that failed 75% of the time they were at the plate. They're 275 career hitters in the Hall of Fame, right? Because they hit the spot where they're supposed to at the right moment. They didn't look back and go, "Man, I failed 75% of the time in my life in my career, and I'm still an elite person in my career." So if you think about failing once as being the end of the world, then man, you're not cut out for 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 the
Well,
world
and
you're
that
in, I
that
guess.
goes back to your point. That goes to your point that you asked me originally was this idea of friction,
Hmm.
right? So if we look at friction, what is friction? Friction is energy.
Okay. Yeah.
Friction is a form of power. Now, where do you want to be, right? Like, do I want to be in the electric chair, or do I want to be using? Do I want to be in a cyber truck? Like, how am I using the electricity here? How am I going to use that friction? How am I going to use that energy? So in sport, you don't even have sport if there's no friction. And what I would argue is even deeper. And I think this is where a big disconnect has happened in our culture, and something that I'm actively campaigning why I'm here with you
Hmm.
is that I think people need to connect their purpose to their work again.
Mm,
I think there's this big kind of,
that's huge.
and when I say loser, I'm not calling names. I'm saying, like, you're going to win or you're going to lose. And in fact, to your point, you're going to, if you really try something, you're going to be a loser uh, for a long time. You're going to get beat up, right?
Yep.
So let's say you start boxing. First 6 months are brutal, dude. You take
Imagine.
up snowboarding. Dude, first 6 months are brutal. You're banging, you're landing on your butt or catch a toe side edge, you're on your knees or your face until you pierce the veil, until you get to the other side of that. And everybody's different. Some people are late bloomers, some people get it right away. But the bottom line is that you've got to find purpose in that overcoming, in that struggle. Maybe it's boredom. Maybe the struggle is how to keep learning all of the boring, tedious nonsense in accounting, for example. Or how many times has Steph Curry thrown a free throw in practice?
Right.
If he's doing 500 a day in practice over the course of his time as a basketball guy, we're looking at 3 million shots to hit the 3,000 career ones that counted. It's a fraction, right?
Yeah, it kind of goes to that, what, like 10,000 hours of work to make you proficient at something. Is that old phrase? To be a
Yeah,
master?
I mean, it
Kind
really
of the
just
same
comes
thing.
down to,
Work.
what is it? Aristotle says
Yeah.
repetition is the mother of skill. Like you gotta just do it again and again and again and again.
It's true.
And it's the ones that win are the ones that, if we factor out things like talent, it's the people that just do the repetitions and get really good. And so in that regard, people do sport and they spend a lot of money on sport for free. Imagine if they took that same passion, that same mindset, and put that into their work.
Hmm. I know. I'm laughing because the people who we're recording on a Sunday. Football's on right now. It's the playoffs, and people get so passionate about their teams and stuff.
Yeah.
And football season, and then you think about going through the mundane Monday through Friday, be passionate about a 60-minute event on Sunday. And like you said, if you put that same passion into your work, where that growth might happen is just exponential. If you think about it, just that same energy, which actually leads me to my next question, Jake. Talk about leverage literally determines the outcome of a fight, right? In your world. How does the idea of leverage, either it's mechanical or potential or positional, psychological, whatever, how does that show up in the business world?
Well, yeah, 100%. So if I'm an athlete, I've got a body, and I'm in gravity. There's like physics involved,
Hmm.
right? So this idea of leverage is the idea that give me a lever long enough and I can move the world, right?
Mm.
Like this idea that it's a way of amplifying your strength.
Hmm.
So me, I'm 52, not not an athlete, not in my peak. I'm on the downside, got a lot of injuries, and but how is it that I can make the most of what I got? I can use leverage. Now, we have to take these general principles of how to win in the world, and again, I think sports is a great place to look. And how do we apply that in business? So I deal with a lot of entrepreneurs that are really serious about growing. Okay, they're really committed to this idea. They love their business. They've gotten a little taste, a little success, and then they've plateaued. They can't get any further.
Hmm.
Well, one of the quick things to do is to recognize what is the actual speed bump. What's the bottleneck? The bottleneck a lot of times is the actual entrepreneur themselves, right? So I work with a lot of mentors of my own as I mentor other people, and you're just a chain, like a link in the chain of masters and students, right? Like you're
Right.
just a link, and then hopefully you're passing on the wisdom to other people that you're getting from the people that helped you. And one of the things that you have to do is you have to get help. This is how you get leverage. Again, it's on both sides. So above me, I'm going to go seek out these guys. For example, in wrestling, I sought out the Guinness record holder for the most wins and pins in all wrestling, holds the record for the most wins in collegiate wrestling, most wins over international champions, national champions. It's just a freak, man, like in the best way.
Hmm.
Superhuman.
Wow.
Sought him out. Okay. In scientific wrestling, I have another coach who's mentored me named Frank Shamrock. He's the first gentleman was Wade Chalice, Frank Shamrock, four-time undefeated UFC
Oh
champion.
yeah.
I want to learn from these guys so I don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's leverage. But then for the people to get my message, my product out there, I need to leverage other people because there's only so much me to go around. Again, the physics and time and space say that there's only so much time in a day and only so much effort that I can apply in that time. And so I need to get help. And so I have probably, it changes all the time. So forgive me if I'm wrong, but I'm just going to say 5 VAs, 5 people that I employ, virtual assistants.
Mhm.
I don't need people in person. And when I do need people in person, then I hire them. So that would be a perfect example of leverage. One, leveraging my mentors. So I'm not reinventing the wheel and making the same mistakes maybe that they knew or they made or they knew to avoid. And then the other way you can get leverage is by amplifying your own, like duplicating yourself in your business through creating an SOP for a process so it's out of your brain on a piece of paper and giving that recipe to somebody else to help you bake more cakes in the same amount of time.
I love that, Jake. Talking a little bit about utilizing this muscle for success, and people try to muscle their way into success. When they're in that process, what do you see them missing about muscling their way in? Are they missing something along the way?
Well, you hear this all the time. Work smart, don't work hard.
Right.
Um,
I love that one.
right? It's like a cliche. Like we've heard it over and over again. And I will say that working smart will be working hard, but working hard and smart will be working smart.
Okay.
And so the muscle part is undeniable. You have to grind. So one of my mentors on the business side is Grant Cardone. That guy's an animal. He's like closer to 70 than he is 60. Has 2 young daughters, like under 20.
Mhm.
Um, a family, and then multiple businesses doing incredible work. Still shows up everywhere. Still, the guy works harder than anybody I know. He's a billionaire and he's in his late 60s. So you're going to have to grind no matter what. I mean, again, look at
Mhm.
somebody um, like Dana White,
Sure.
or even somebody as controversial as Vince McMahon. There's no doubt that despite Vince McMahon's questionable whatever, or Dana White slapping his wife the day before Slap Fight comes out, or whatever is going on with their own personal issues, okay? Those guys work their ass off. There's no doubt about that. And they're already at the pinnacle of success. So the grind, the work hard, the muscle, I don't know that ever goes away, but that's the same with athletics. You're
Yeah.
still going to have to expend an enormous amount of calories. But now, to your prior question, is I have to keep that muscle going, but then I have to amplify that through leverage, like we spoke of.
One of the things we talked about in the pre-interview is how you distinguish between competing and dominating. And there's a shift that happens. What what does someone stop doing and start doing when they move towards from say competition to domination?
This this is a very, very interesting question because it's mostly mental. Now it does play out into the real world and the amount of effort you take and stuff, but when I'm competing, I'm thinking about other people.
Okay.
When I'm dominating, I'm thinking about my own potential.
Mm,
And so if I'm worried about how much work somebody else is doing and I want to do 1 calorie more, that's competing.
okay.
If I'm looking at the fact that I want to absolutely dominate, I don't really care even about competing. It's just got to be a foregone conclusion. I stopped looking at what other people are doing. I have to know that data, like market research or watching tapes of my opponents or something. I have to know that data. But what is more important is to say, what is my full potential? You look at somebody, for example, like who's a legend in the sport of wrestling, Dan Gable.
Okay.
Dude, that guy was obsessed. And I mean, like Grant Cardone has a book, Be Obsessed or Be Average. So to dominate requires just this level of commitment, this level of real commitment to your full potential, knowing if I can do more, I must do more.
Hmm.
That to me is really the difference. Competitive is like, I need to do more to beat XYZ. Opponent, competitor, business, dominance is, okay, they're there, give me the info, but what is our full capacity? If I can see 700, if I can fulfill 700 units a month and I'm only fulfilling 300, what's the gap?
Right.
I have to do, and how do I get past 700 to 7,000? That's dominant thinking.
Dude, I love that.
And then not taking any excuse. It's hard because some of this stuff is trained in us by our parents, our teachers, even some of our coaches that didn't have that domination mindset.
That's true. I mean, when I'm coaching people in the money space, we always talk about something called money scripts or your beliefs. It's basically how you were raised and what your connection is with money. What are some of the triggers and emotional triggers that come up about why you spend, how you spend, and it's the same thing with people like you're talking about there. It's just kind of the same deal. It's if maybe their parents were a little timid in dealing with their boss or whatever, that same sort of work ethic or mindset around roles and companies and positions and how you progress up the corporate ladder is probably instilled in them as well. If mom and dad were middle people, never really strive to move up the corporate chain, well, that probably got put into you as well at some point. And you're just going to be that same middle of the road kind of don't really care if you move up or down, just want a job kind of, and that's fine. I'm not that's fine. But we're talking about people who really want to look at themselves and go, man, I want what's next? What's more? How do I improve? How do I get further? And if you don't have that training in you from your youth, whether it's through sport or just through mentors or good people around you to see what that looks like, you're already starting at a disadvantage.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And so much of this is mental,
Yeah.
but and again, this applies both to business and to athletics, or it could be theater, could be like any kind of real performance based activity.
Hmm.
Sometimes, so like I'll go back to Dan Gable, just because it's top of mind because we just mentioned him. His parents weren't champions in wrestling. He was,
Yeah.
right? And what is that difference between the people that just get obsessed and that's all they focus on, and everybody else? And ultimately, it does come down to a decision, and then it comes down to a commitment where you just don't negotiate with yourself. You're like, I'm going to do this,
Hmm.
and win or lose, there's no guarantee. This isn't a participation trophy situation like sports, like business. Although we do see that creeping in on both, sadly. And we throw everything that we have at the task. But that's where the purpose in life comes in, is central to the definition of entrepreneur is the idea of risk. And what is risk? Risk in finance, I have a master's in financial mathematics. Oh, financial engineering is really what it's called. Basically, financial mathematics, a little bit of
Yeah.
fancy financial instruments and some computer programming. But central to the concept of risk is this idea of uncertainty.
Hmm. Absolutely.
I don't know what's going to happen. And that's why I reap the award, because I could do it and lose. And most people do lose. There's only so many spaces on a podium, for example.
Hmm.
There's only so many ways to be the number one soda or housekeeper or attorney or real estate guy. There's only so many spots. And how hard did I work and how much leverage did I use? And was I willing to push in and take that risk to lose everything for this?
Yeah, it's interesting.
That's not for everybody.
No, no, it's very interesting you mentioned that because when you get into like the investing space, when you work with a financial planner, and I'm trained in financial planning, one of the things we kind of went over was this risk tolerance level for investors, and it's for everybody. I'll put a PSA out there right now. If you're going to a financial planner for the first time and they don't give you a risk tolerance test, find another financial planner. You should do a risk tolerance level. Now, you may score a 1 out of 10 and you're not risky at all. That's fine, but at least they know where you're at and they'll work with you. But if they're not measuring your risk tolerance, find a new financial planner. That's my PSA of the day. But they would put that out there so you know, like, hey, if I'm a risky person and I don't mind the risk and I'm going to put myself in a position to either reap the giant rewards or lose dearly, and I'm okay with that and I can move on and be fine with that decision, then that's one thing. But if I'm waking up in the middle of the night seeing that my stock dropped a half a percent and I've lost $4 yesterday and I'm freaking out over it, then yeah, my risk tolerance level is very low and I have to be very careful about what I'm doing. But I like how you've mentioned the risk part of it because people measure risk completely differently, and it's a matter of just understanding where that person is in the process. And that could be in business or that could be in their own life or personal
Yeah, but
relationship.
I'm gonna make a suggestion to people. Like you said, if your financial guy is not um, giving you some sort of assessment as to your tolerance for risk, for uncertainty, you should consider going somewhere else. And in investing or in sport, you don't want to give up
No,
points. You don't
you're
want to
right.
lose points. You don't want to
Yeah.
get penalties. You don't
Mhm.
want to like lose money. Like the return of capital is more important than the return on the capital.
Sure.
But I'm going to argue there are ways for us to lock that in, no matter what the circumstances are, what we're dealing with, if it's business, finance, sports, life, whatever. There's ways to lock that in, insurance, ways to insure that. But it's a bigger risk to not take a risk.
No, I agree, and I know
And
what you're saying.
these people, like you said, if your guy tells you, hey, if you come in and he doesn't give you a risk, that's the first warning signal. The second one I would say is that let's not lose any money, but let's be as aggressive as we can. I mean, this weenie stuff. If you look at the if you look at the most successful people, when you really start studying it, the thing I hear from all the most successful people over and over again, there's thing variances, but there's also common denominators, and it's a bigger risk to not take risk.
Sure.
Ironically.
Yeah, and I appreciate the follow-up on that, and I think as you're saying it, I'm thinking more to the point of that there's ways to, elevate your risk tolerance over time with your person, and I think that's where, I wanted to go with the conversation, and I appreciate you bringing me back there. Sitting in a 1 for your entire life on a 1 to 10 scale is not gonna get you where you need to be. But starting at a 10 when you're a 1 is also not gonna get you where you need to be. But gradually getting you up to maybe your peak is a 5 in your life, but you started at a 1. So now when you're sitting in a 5, you might be like, "5's your new bottom." Well, let me try what 6 or 7 looks like because 'cause I'm comfortable here. And then eventually you can get up. But start like you said, staying in one spot is not good. The comfort of the complacency of comfort is never a good thing. Sometimes you need a little
Oh, it's
bit
always
of
the
that.
comfort. Comfort's the enemy.
Right.
Comfort's the enemy. We look at our world today. We look at our world today. We live in the pinnacle, as far as we know. I mean, I don't know about ancient aliens and all that shit, but as far as we know, we live in the pinnacle of human comfort and convenience. Man, I'm old enough to remember when I'd send away for a joy buzzer or a magic trick deck of cards when I was a child, and it was like 8 weeks delivery.
Mhm.
Dude, I can get stuff in 2 days now. I remember back in the day there was like 7 channels on TV. Now it's like my kids can watch whatever, whenever. There's infinite. We live in the pinnacle of comfort, and then we need to look at what is that doing?
Mhm.
it's great. I'm not knocking it. I'm not a Luddite. I don't want to go back to the caveman. I like 2 day shipping. I'm into that. But what I'm not into is the excuses and the BS and the this inflation that has happened to the term challenge and difficulty.
Yeah, that's amazing.
When I'm talking about being being successful and working your ass off, like you and I showing up on a Sunday here, and last time we talked, it was late at night. Like, who does that? Okay, people who want to win, people who are serious. But we've got to get rid of it. Like, dude, that's not hard work, dude. You know what's hard work? Tarring a hot roof in August. That digging a ditch and doing that like all day, every day
Hmm.
in the sun. Like, that's hard work. We don't like. There are people that work hard like that. And God bless them. And honestly, again, I'm not a luddite. Everybody's freaked out about AI. Oh, AI is going to replace everybody. I'm like, no, it's not, dude. It's going to save people from this hard ass work, man. I'd rather stick a drone or a robot, one of Elon Musk's Optimus guys, on the roof and free that guy to go do something else. Like when the light bulb came around. Yeah, candle makers and people who did like whale oil, which was how lamps were lit, they had to go find another job. When the car replaced horse and buggy, they lost those jobs, but you go find something else to do, and it'll probably be easier because of the technology, because of the leverage. That's another wonderful thing that you can leverage.
Yeah,
And now is a better time than ever with this AI. Oh my
I know.
gosh. Oh my, like I look at these excuses and I'm like, dude, seriously, like it's nonsense. And I think everybody's tolerated these excuses with each other as like a pass. Okay, yeah, I'll pretend what you're doing is hard if you pretend what I'm doing is hard, and then we'll blow each other up and our egos be great. And then we're both losers.
Yeah, I mean, innovation breeds opportunity for sure.
All these people, oh, we're going to need a UBI, a universal basic income. Okay, that's just give up. Why don't you just go on welfare right now? Because we got a universal basic income. It's called welfare. Just give up, dude. Oh, AI is here. I can't do anything. It's stupid. Stupid.
I mean, and
It's
to
weak.
your point of AI, what's amazing about AI nowadays is you're actually talking to my AI avatar. I'm not actually here. This is just a computer image of me.
How's the football game?
Someday, man, someday. Yeah, I'm actually watching the game in the other room. This is fine. Speaking to the point of just what we're kind of talking about here, um, there's this sense nowadays of a lot of people listening, a lot of people who've tuned into the show before. There's this giant sense of overwhelm for people feeling stuck because pressure keeps showing up either in business and finances and relationships. What's one way they can start to think differently about pressure so that it becomes fuel instead of fear?
Well, the alliteration that I've heard, and I think it's great. Again, it's mental. Is that pressure is a privilege?
Hmm.
I think that's you've got to start looking at these things. I think I'm not super duper religious, but you look at some of these things, and people used to look at these as challenges from God, like, and they'd find purpose in overcoming these difficulties,
Sure.
and that it was actually the Lord or who the universe or whatever Shiva, I don't know what you're into, but presented this to you as an opportunity for personal development to become, again, talking about your full potential. So, you know, I understand that people feel. I understand that I feel overwhelmed like all the time, dude. But the challenge is this: one, are there legitimate things to overcome? Yes. You know who I feel for a little bit are these young people.
Mm,
The ability for these young people to afford a home based on the wages there's been a disconnect between wages and prices since the 1970s when Nixon took us off the gold standard, right?
Right.
So that you could look at these graphs. It's data. It's not controversial. So I do feel bad for these young people, but at the same time, we have to get over that, and we have to say, okay, yeah, pity party over. No matter what it is, I got to roll up my sleeves and figure this out. And when you do get to that point, that's huge. It's super huge because there's this idea. It's interesting. People should Google it. It's called learned helplessness.
Hmm.
And I think that we're trained. And I'm not saying that to abscond anybody of any responsibility, but once you know about it, you can't abscond the responsibility anymore. You've got to just buckle down and get her done. And so one of the easiest ways to deal with the overwhelm, in my opinion, is this idea of sustained, single-minded focus and as much effort as you could put behind whatever it is that you're focusing on over the extended series of time.
Yeah.
Am I concerned when I have 3 kids, I look at my 13-year-old and he's on TikTok and they're training the mind to be able to focus for about 15 seconds? Yeah, I'm concerned about that. Am I doing something? Yeah, I'm going to help him develop the skills that it takes to maintain the focus to finish a project. Most people underestimate the amount of effort it takes to win at something. That's just, or everybody win.
Yeah.
What happens is everybody says, "Oh, I want to do this," and they get involved. And they're like, "Oh my god, I had no idea," and then they get on to the next shiny object. Well, this is why you've got to just say, "This is what I want to do, and I'm going to do it," and then you shut everything else off and you just go. This is why things like goals are important. So in sports, we set championship goals. I want to win the regional, the national, the world title, whatever. You have to do that, and you can't waver from it,
Right.
no matter what the excuse is that pops up. And the excuse might be legit, maybe it's a death in the family or something. This is the same thing with setting targets in your business.
Right. So
I want to triple our revenue this year.
wait. So let's
Do
get
you have
into
any
that.
idea how much work that's going to
I
be?
know. So that's why I want to get into the sportifying thing that you talked about earlier. Sportifying somebody's life, adding the disciplines, habits, structures, goals, the athletes use to somebody's life. Um, Kind of break that down a little bit to someone who's maybe doesn't have experience in sport, in the gym or the ring, like what that would look like for somebody. And then, yeah, well, why is that important? You said goals. Why is that important to set them? It's a loaded question.
Well, I mean, because, well, yeah. I mean, right. Like, if I don't know what my point is, if I get into do an Uber car driver thing and I don't set my destination, we're just going to drive around in circles and blow some money. Yeah, I might drink a couple free bottles of water, but that's a waste of my time and his time. Well, he's making money. I'm blowing the money. So I need to just know what the point is. So let's look at the history of the meaning of the word coach. Okay. The etymology. I'm a nerd for etymology. I'm a nerd for a lot of crap. I love etymology. I got my master's degree is in math, but my undergraduate was in English, and it was largely a waste of time and money. But the thing that I did pick up that I found the most value in was this concept of etymology. There's this great book called the Oxford English Dictionary, and it gives you the history of the meaning of the word. For example, health and wealth both come from the same root term, cognate, and it's wheel, well, like well-being, wealth, health. They're all connected. And so if we look at the etymology and the history and the meaning of the word coach, it's kind of good
Mhm.
that I used that Uber driver example, because the term coach goes back to like horse and buggy,
Right, right.
like Wells Fargo logo coach. Okay. And what is a coach? A coach is just there to get you from point A to point B, because here's the reality. Why do the top performers, why did Mike Tyson have custom auto? Because it is hard.
Mhm.
It's very, like, when you're setting about to do something insane, like very difficult, not average, like the very tail end of a bell-shaped curve of like the few, you're gonna have moments of doubt. You're gonna have times when your own beliefs start messing with you.
Yeah.
And you need a crusty old coach like Burgess Meredith in the Rocky movies, right, with Stallone. Come on, Rock, let's go. You got to have somebody who's willing to crawl up your
I
ass
didn't hear no bell.
because they actually care about your goals.
Right. Right. It's like you're saying, like Tyson, like Tiger. I was always surprised. I was younger when Tiger Woods was at his peak, but he's a swing coach. I'm like, the guy's winning by 50 strokes over everybody in the Masters. He's got a swing coach. I mean, was he want to win by 60 strokes next time? I mean, but still,
Well,
he's there
and this is
because there's still
interesting. This is
improvements.
interesting. To your original question. So this concept. Why did I come up with this concept to sportify something? Well, I came up with the concept because it didn't really exist as a concept. So I'm like, well, I think this would be useful just as a mental tool for people to hang on to. And I came to it because my wife and I have a software company. It's a 25-year-old. I think it's 30 years old now, 1994. So it's a 30-year-old software company, which in technology is like
Yeah.
dog years. It's like ridiculous. We're in 16 countries. Really, really nice. It's called Gatemaster. It runs amusement parks and water parks and such.
Oh.
Gatemaster technology. Gatemaster.com. But during that, I was looking at this concept known as gamification.
Mhm.
Are you familiar
A
with
little
that? I
bit,
mean, I'm
yeah,
sure
a
you've
little
heard
bit,
it to
yeah.
gamify.
Yeah.
Well, it's just this idea that everybody sees it now, where I can get a badge or there's a leaderboard at work that says who's number one in sales at a car dealership, let's say, or it's this gamification, making a game out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I was studying it, I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is cool. But I've got these dual backgrounds. I've got this math and technical background, and then I got this sport and coaching background where I've been lucky to work with the top guys and study them. And I started looking, and one of the interesting things in gamification is this idea about motivation. And they split. This is academic, so I apologize for being a nerd.
Okay.
But gamification talks about two forms in the literature. Talks about two forms of motivation: intrinsic or internal motivation, and external motivation. Okay, gamification rocks on external motivation. That is, I got the trophy, I got all this kind of stuff. Okay, I got the badge, I'm on the top of the leaderboard. External validation, external motivation. That works great, but it only takes you so far. So how do we go from this external to the internal? And to me, this was the gap that needed to be filled.
Mm.
Gamification gets the external thing down, and it works pretty good. But I've yet to see a city be leveled from riots over a game. I've seen it over sports, but I have not seen that level of motivation where people are willing to take a risk and put themselves in prison to riot and overturn cars and stuff. When they win, it's like wild. So I'm like, what is the difference in the motivation there? And I'm like, that's a sport. What's the difference between a sport and a game? Typically, the sport involves a coach to help you push and get that internal motivation. And usually there's large sums of money in a sport, a professional sport.
Sure.
So that's really what I started looking at. And I started digging in here and I'm like, oh my gosh, I really think, and I just read, again, I'm a statistician. I've worked as a statistician for a while. And so I love stats. There's a great book put out by the Gallup group. And the Gallup group does all the polling and the statistics. Mm-hmm. And they have this really cool book. It's called It's the Manager. And that's such a boring, dude, they need some help on their marketing because that's like the worst title. But it's a really great book because it's based on data. And what the data found was that the reason why companies are failing is the managers. Because they're not getting engagement out of their team.
Okay.
And the difference is, in my opinion, is the sportification. I'm basically a management consultant. It's what I what I do, and what that means is I'm going in and I'm transforming the culture at a company from manager to a coach.
Ah,
And we could just think about this very simply. Nobody's doing this. Um, that's why I got this name, number one, because I really like to be the first to do things. I like to dominate, all that kind of stuff. But um, this idea is an idea whose time has come. And if I go to a group of little five year olds or fifth graders even, hey, hey guys, thanks for having me. Who here, when they grow up, wants to be managed? Nobody's gonna, no kid's gonna raise. Oh, I want to be managed. Like it never happened in a million years. But if I say, hey guys, who here wants to be in a position where you're actually coached? Who wants to be a basketball star? Who wants to be a rock star? Who wants to be? All the hands go up. All those. So you got to again the meaning of the words, right? What's the difference between man? What's the vibe? What's the difference between management and a coach?
yeah. It's actually interesting when you think about sports too. Like I think soccer uses the word manager, baseball for sure, but football coach, basketball coach, hockey coach, they don't really call them those. They don't call managers in those sports. I wonder if there's a something to that. I don't know. When you started talking about manager and coach, I was
Yeah,
just trying
well,
to think
it's
about.
interesting too. You follow football. Who's the highest paid state employee in pretty much every state except like one or two out of 50 freaking states?
College football coach,
It's the college football,
right?
and it's performance based,
Yeah,
and he gets results out of his team or he don't.
yeah, that's crazy, man. Um, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about catch as catch can wrestling. We've talked a lot about everything, but like I said, I want to talk about that for a little bit here. That's something that I didn't know really much anything about. When you explained it to me, I was like, oh, I guess I do know a little bit about it. Just I didn't know what it was called or what I've seen it as. But can you kind of just bring the listeners into what that actually is and how it's probably, in one of the most influential and impactful sports in history?
Yeah, that's how I usually try to pitch it because people have no idea even what I'm talking about. And again, I have to get people's attention. I have to market, and I'm data driven. So I'm like, I mean, I have no problem when I got facts on my side. I'll debate with an MD, PhD. I'm like, go, let's go, because I'm not stupid and I know how to read facts and judge things. And so it's very what you bring up is very interesting because quantifiably, I can quantify it. And I'll do it quickly here for everybody. They can go to AI or look it up themselves, whatever. But catch is catch can wrestling, which is just a mouthful. It's again real crappy
Marketing.
marketing. Yeah, but catch is catch can wrestling originally started. Wrestling's the world's oldest sports. We could see hieroglyphics of people wrestling like thousands of thousands before Christ, right? Thousands of years. So we know wrestling's been around. But catch as catch can, which has been around before this time, but was first documented in 1870. It was 1870. So we're talking the Civil War era. Okay. This is before the Olympics.
Mhm.
And it was just this crazy notion. For example, in wrestling, historically, most wrestling was upper body wrestling, which is similar to like what you see in Greco-Roman. That's why they call it Greco-Roman. Greco-Roman was made up for the Olympics, but it was meant to be like this is the style of wrestling. And traditionally, it was upper body. It was considered very bad taste to grab somebody's legs while you're wrestling. I mean, I don't know. It's just how things work. Okay, so most wrestling was contested. This upper body wrestling, like Vikings, like going all the way back.
Mhm.
Well, these Irish miners in the north of England, after a long day of being in the coal mines, I mean, these are the poorest of the poor. At the end of the day, doing all that hard work. I mean, real hard work. Again, I was saying like tar on a hot roof. Like this,
Yeah.
this is like really hard work. And bent over in a mine, doing this crap. At the end of a long day, they'd be hanging with their buds, right? And they'd be like, kind of BSing or whatever at the end of the day. And they'd be like, yeah, I could totally kick your ass. And everything back then, they couldn't swipe left and right. They didn't have Game Boys. They didn't have all these millions of TV shows and crap.
Right.
What was the entertainment, especially for the middle class, was betting on dumb stuff. They would bet on everything. Hey, I bet you I can. One of my coaches was an old dude. He went, yeah, people used to bet on this thing called triple jumping. And it's like, how far could you do a triple jump without passing over a line?
Hmm.
And they would bet on all kinds of
Yeah.
nonsense. Well, at the end of a hard day, they bet on this like, hey, I bet you I could beat your ass. Now, mind you, a lot of these guys could not get into punching and kicking like bare knuckle boxing because they used their hands. They couldn't break their hands. They couldn't get cut and break their nose. They had to do something. And so this is where catch as catch can came about. So they started betting, and the rules where you could do anything. That's what catch as catch any move that you can.
Ah,
Is basically the modern translation.
got it.
Okay. So why is this weird little obscure thing by Irishmen in the north of England? And my guess is that it came over from Ireland, but the Irish were forbidden because they were occupied by the British Empire, the same people we had to fight for our independence. It was illegal for them to learn to read and write. They couldn't write anything down. So I think it came over from England, and then the gentry in England started betting on these fights, like human dog fighting,
Wow.
and that's when it got documented. Okay, but my point here is that from that, eventually some of the guys got so good at this wrestling thing, they were making more money on the bets on themselves than in the coal mines, and these were the first professional wrestlers.
Hmm. Wow.
Okay. Now, the very first Olympics that this sport was, so in, I think it was 1900 or maybe 1896, maybe 1896, they had Greco-Roman. That was
Right.
like the first Olympics.
Right.
They had Greco-Roman. Cool. Upper body wrestling. But by 1904, this catch as catch can had become so popular in the north of England and elsewhere. It got exported to the United States during the Civil War. Everybody's bored in the Civil War, so they start wrestling to pass the time, betting on it. They eventually allowed it into the Olympics, and it was called amateur catch as catch can wrestling. You can go back and look at this, 1904. That's what evolved into modern freestyle wrestling
Oh,
we see in the Olympics. The collegiate wrestling that we see in the NCAA's high school students in America, we call that folk style wrestling. Differentiate, there's slight different rules between freestyle and folk style, but they're similar. Guess what? When it was first introduced into the amateur athletic unions and all these other groups that were in the NCAA, it was called amateur catch as catch can.
Hmm.
And what they did is they took the danger. There were submission holds. I could win with a pin, or I could win with a submission by making the other guy give up. Okay. And they took out the dangerous submissions and kept the pin, and that became amateur catch as catch can to differ it from the pros. That went into the Olympics, that went into the NCAAs. Well, in America, this caught fire, this catch as catch can wrestling. And there are some guys like Frank Gotch, this is called the Golden Age. Frank Gotch, Tom Jenkins, these people, Evan Strangler Lewis, they became the first professional wrestlers. It was much more like the UFC, where they would do these submissions. You could win with a choke, you could win with a pin. And that eventually evolved into the stuff we see with WWE. The fix came in. Boxing treated the corrupt fixing of things slightly different than wrestling. Boxing, they would fix fights by creating a tomato can, building up some guy with a fake resume, having him fight idiots to build a big win streak, and then pit him against a guy who actually could kill that guy. And so they kept it legitimate through this kind of fake system. And we see that today. That still happens with boxing, MMA. They have these kind of ways to
Yeah.
pad people's records. So that's one way of manipulating. In wrestling, they just said, "Screw it. It's just fake, dude. This is just theater," and that became WWE. So we've got and UFC, by the way, mixed martial arts. Let's call it mixed martial arts. That's UFC is a promotion. Mixed martial arts actually started. Probably the biggest one was held through with a catch as catch can based pro wrestler named Antonio Inoki versus Muhammad Ali in the late 70s. That was a very famous fight. Prior to that, another guy with catch as catch can and professional wrestling background had the first televised MMA match in Salt Lake City in the 60s, Gene LeBell against Milo Savage, a boxer. But these matches went way, way back. So there was a lot of these matches between boxers and wrestlers and jiu-jitsu people from Japan at the turn of the century, 19th to 20th century. So even UFC, the very first MMA organization, was out of Japan called Shuto. That was straight competitive, but the rules
Mhm.
of pro wrestling. It's called Shuto. And that happened in I think they came out in 85. UFC wasn't until 93, 94. So a full 10 years prior. And this was
Wow.
started again, catch as catch can people. So this is my long-winded way of quantifying this for everybody. If I were to take the number of athletes, coaches, fans, and business people that have been involved with catch as catch can itself and its direct descendants, amateur catch as catch can, professional wrestling, and MMA, and add all those people up, it dwarfs soccer because this has been going on for well over 100 years, like 100, let's call it 150 years almost.
I keep thinking about that guy.
But nobody knows that.
That guy you mentioned, the Strangler. I keep thinking about what his submission hold must have been to get that
Yeah,
nickname.
yeah, right. He would choke people.
Right.
And that's how he got famous. Is like people are like, "Oh, that's a dirty technique." He's like, "Dude, show me where it says I can't do that, and then go change the rule."
Right.
But I'm gonna choke some fools and make some money. He was the first world heavyweight wrestling champion, Evan Lewis, EVAN Lewis, and he was known as the Strangler. But again, nobody knows this. So this is me being a nerd again,
Yeah.
like on etymology and on statistics and on sports psychology and gamification. With Catch as Catch Can, I saw this and I was like, what the hell? And so I also saw like, oh man, this name Catch as Catch Can, that's a problem. And then they even tried to shorten it to catch wrestling. And I'm like, what is that? Football and wrestling? That sounds like rugby or something. So I'm going to brand my company, and I called it Scientific Wrestling. And that was actually kind of a euphemism that was used interchangeably. I was like, ooh, that's a good sounding name. And so I
Mhm.
branded my company back in 2003, Scientific Wrestling, and we promoted it. We brought it back. There was nobody doing it. There was nobody holding competitions, none of that. So I did that, started that, and we got some pretty good momentum. I've been working on for 25 years, but to my point, sustained single-minded focus over time.
Yeah, it's funny because when you keep saying that, catch as catch can, I keep thinking as like catch me if you can wrestling. Like people running around in circles, try to catch me.
I think that would be the modern equivalent of the word.
Right.
But who would call it that?
Right. It just makes sense. I like your take a lot better. It's much easier to understand. Um, for listeners who feel stuck, maybe they're in a stalemate right now. Maybe they keep hitting that same wall over and over again. What is the first What's the first scientific step they can take today to regain control and start moving forward again?
Well, okay. So if I look at the word uh, science, it just means knowledge,
Hmm.
and I think the very first step is to acknowledge facts. You have to acknowledge that, oh, I'm not at my full potential and I could do more, and I shit myself and give myself excuses all the time, and that knowledge is huge. So it's so funny, like the word conscious. If I'm conscious of something, it means I'm aware of something. Well, again, the roots, con, science, conscious, that conscience, right? With science,
Mhm.
with knowledge. That means, and it's so funny because when we talk about ethics, and I talk about this in my second in the Sportify books, con science, conscience with knowledge means you have an ethical and moral duty if you have that knowledge. So what's so funny is so many people are just, I don't want to assign blame, but I do want to say it's your responsibility, regardless of who's to blame. It's your responsibility. When you know you can do more, you should do more. So honestly, that's the first thing is to take that piece of knowledge and knowing like, could I do more?
That's a good. That's a good piece of advice. Do more. Do more. I love it. So, Jake, we're at the time in the episode where we have our rapid fire round 10 question, one word answers, or one sentence answers, or quick answers. Everybody gets the
Okay,
same questions. I'm going to hit you with them. Are you ready?
let's go.
Okay. What is the best book that you ever read that changed your perspective?
The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand.
What's a daily habit that contributes most to your success?
Uh, a fitness routine. I do. I wake up, go to the bathroom, and literally get down, do 50 push-ups, 100 squats, 200 sit-ups, and 25 assisted pull-ups. My shoulders are bad every day. So I wake up at 5:45. By 6 a.m., I've done more work than 90%, 95% of anybody I know,
I'd say.
and I haven't even started.
What's the worst
I'm
financial? I
52. I
know.
mean, it's
I'm
stupid, dude. There's no excuse.
no. I got to start doing that too. Thanks for the motivation. What's the worst financial or business mistake you ever made, and what did you learn from it?
Probably the worst decision I ever made was to blame other people for my lot in life.
Mm,
And it cost me maybe billions of dollars.
uh,
And so you've got to just take responsibility.
if you could have dinner with any entrepreneur, past or present, who would it be?
Well, it depends on why.
Okay.
If it was purely just to get knowledge, probably Elon Musk. Man, that guy's a freak. I'd like to pick his brain on method. If it was selfishly, I'd probably want to have a meeting with Dana White because I think he could help me with my business quickly
Okay.
once he saw the vision.
Put it out there in the world. Never know what happens. What's one mindset shift that completely changed the game for you?
Discipline over motivation. Do it anyway.
What is a piece of advice you ignored at first but later realized was complete gold?
Um, you need to really understand marketing and sales. I went the other way. I tried to learn everything I could about process and systems, and that's important to me now. But you'll never need processes and systems if you can't market and sell your ideas.
So true. What is one word that describes your journey so far?
Grit.
If you had to start over tomorrow with nothing but what's in your head, what's the first thing you do?
Make a list of anybody and everybody that I've helped.
It's important. What is one thing people misunderstand about you or your work?
I think they underestimate how much I've done. and how much I've failed. And it's easy to see the wins, but they have no idea. They're not willing to do what I did. And they'll talk all kind of, but this is, dude, haters are a status symbol. If you don't have haters, you're not doing anything.
It's a mark of success right there. And finally,
It is. It sucks. I'm
it
not saying
does.
it's awesome, but dude,
It does, man. I appreciate that. And last question: what is your personal definition of prosperity?
uh, freedom, options. I guess I would even options, the ability to do whatever I want with whom I want, when I want.
I love that. Jake, thank you so much for being here, bringing a powerful scientific perspective to winning in business, leadership, and life. If you want to go deeper or experience his coaching firsthand, visit No1 Coaching. I want to say no one or number one. It's number one coaching, no1coaching.com/book a call, book-a-call. All the notes with all these links and stuff will be in the description below. You'll find tools, training, a chance to have a personal strategy session with Jake himself. Anything else you want to add? Anywhere else people can find you, Jake?
Yeah. So, yeah, like you said, and this was kind of me trying to do a play on words. You can either be no one or number one, and that again is a
That's
decision
beautiful.
you have to make.
That's beautiful.
Um, so yeah, number one coaching is a great place to go. But if they're interested in the wrestling stuff, I have so much stuff for free. They can find scientificwrestling.com or at scientific wrestling on all the socials. We have so many videos on YouTube and stuff that's just free.
Again, thank you so much for your insight. I really learned a lot about what you do, and there's definitely some stuff I'm going to start applying to myself. Like get up in the morning, make sure I do some squats and push-ups and stuff. That's going to be very helpful to get me going and get back into shape. I used to be a power lifter, Jake, back in the day, so I have to get back into a little bit of a routine because yeah, maybe want to compete again one day. I used to compete back in the day, and
Oh yeah,
maybe get back there. If my shoulder, my hip holds up, I'm a lot older than I used to be, and I'm probably, but at least take those first steps towards getting back into some sort of functional
yeah. The
movement.
way that I look at it is this: is that like I'm jacked. I have one carotid artery because I got choked too many times in my youth. Like I ended up having strokes, and it's called a carotid dissection.
Oh,
Because the way we used to train was stupid. Like we didn't know better. Like you see people, a lot of people in MMA. I did grappling and wrestling. You see a lot of people, for example, in MMA or in football, getting CTE, the concussion problem, right? Because they
mhm,
were training stupidly. Like not stupidly, they didn't know better, but now that you know,
yeah,
you don't hit each other. You save that for the fight or for the game. Well, that was the same with me, and I'm jacked, dude. But it's still not an excuse. I can't wrestle. Literally, I can't anymore because I'm on blood thinners. Like, there's all these problems I have. So I can't do that. It kills me. I had to stop in 2014. It's like, it was depressing, honestly. It was very difficult because so much of my identity was locked up into it. But I mean, and I didn't know what was going on back then. But you have to figure out something else that you can do. So in your case, powerlifting, dude, you're overloading your joints, your knees, your hips, and maybe your shoulders are jacked. So but guess what? You could get down and do 20 push ups on your knees every day after you take a whiz in the morning when you wake up. You could do that. And if you do that consistently, you start building back the faith in yourself because you're witness to your own experience. I, is God watching everything or Santa Claus making a list? Maybe. I don't know. I don't pretend to know things that I don't know. Maybe they are. But what I do know is that you're witness to your own experience. And if you're sick of taking excuses from people, that's probably the only reason you're taking excuses from people is because you make excuses yourself. So if you want to start holding yourself to a higher standard, that's about the only way to not be a hypocrite and hold people to a higher standard outside of yourself. So the first thing you got to do is you got to just make an agreement with yourself and live up to it.
well, that's a beautiful place to end the episode. I'm going to love that, Jake. So thank you so much again. Thank you for joining us today. Like I always say, until next time, stay faithful and stay fearless. And remember, freedom lives where faith and action meet. The lounge is always open, and so is your next breakthrough. This is the Prosperity Lounge. That was Jake Shannon. And if there's one takeaway from today's conversation, it's this: prosperity isn't built by avoiding pressure, it's built by learning how to control it. Whether you're in business leadership, leadership in general, or just trying to make better decisions in your own life. Winning isn't about doing more. It's about doing the right things from the right position. Drake reminded us that motivation fades, willpower breaks down, and hustle eventually runs out. But systems endure, discipline compounds, and leverage changes outcomes. Today's episode challenged the way you think about success, pressure, or competition. I encourage you to take the next step and explore Jake's work at no1coaching.com/book a call. That link is going to be in the show notes. And if this conversation resonated with you, share it with someone who's feeling the weight of the pressure right now. Sometimes the breakthrough starts with a new way of seeing the fight. Until next time, stay faithful, stay fearless, and remember, freedom lives where faith and action meet. The lounge is always open, and so is your next breakthrough. This is the Prosperity Lounge.